Good evening, everyone. You are in Spotlight with Brian Gardner for this Thursday, August the 11th, 2016. Good to have you all here for our second of two shows this week. Um, as always, before we get going, let me remind you all the ways which you can interact and contribute to our show. Have your voice heard by emailing us at itspotlight411 at gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. And then please remember to use the hashtags. Use the hashtags we give to you, which is hashtag ITS541, hashtag ITS5. That one's our 5th anniversary on the air. Hashtag, or you can create your own hashtag, depending on what you're talking about, maybe even. If you're talking about movies, hashtag ITS movies, wrestling, hashtag ITS wrestling. Any of those things you can do. That is for you to decide. Just don't be disrespectful or insulting or offensive. That's all we ask. You can also find us on Facebook. It's In the Spotlight 401 on Facebook is what you want to search for. And once you find us, you can like our fan page and then go ahead and interact with us in any way you would like to do so. All right. As my co-host has jumped on the line here, you're in the Spotlight Light.
Spotlight, Brian.
You are indeed. All right. So before we get going and before I get into my whole, what we're going to do tonight, all that good stuff. We have to mention something that happened yesterday. And it's a sad piece of news, and this has been, I think Mike will note this. Our friend on Facebook, Chris, mentioned this, but you almost want 2016 to end because it's in bad news after bad news. This has been that kind of year.
Yep.
It really has been. I mean, you talk about all the tragedies in the world, and all the prominent celebrities that we've lost as well. And yesterday we lost another. And one, in my opinion, and I will say this I stand by this. In my opinion, one of the most underappreciated people in sports, and that's John Saunders, who, and I will accuse myself of this too, even though I think I had more of an appreciation of him because I watch a lot of ESPN, and but this is a guy that a personality that oftentimes, he was so perfect and so well suited for his job, so comforting and so good at what he does, but in a way that was just natural. He wasn't, like the late Stuart Scott, who was very, not necessarily flamboyant, but he had this larger-than-life personality. He wasn't like that. He wasn't like Chris Berman, who was still at ESPN, but, has this larger-than-life personality. No, he was just good at what he does. He could laugh. He'd have his occasional one-liner. He had his quirks, if you will, but he didn't have the kind of personality, and this ain't a knock on him at all. It isn't. But he didn't have that larger-than-life personality, so people, I think, in a lot of ways took him for granted. He would do the Jimmy V Classic every year for ESPN. He was on the board of the Jimmy V Foundation, did so much work for that foundation, so much work for the game of college basketball, for college football, the NHL on ABC, NHL in the 90s. He was very big in that. He was Canadian American. He's from Toronto, Ontario. He was a hockey player. People don't realize that about him. He was a big hockey guy, and a lot of people didn't realize that about him. And it started on ESPN in the 80s with that. You talk about the Bermans and the Bob Lee and that group. He started around that time, and he was the one that, again, I just don't think ever got appreciated as much as he should have. Yesterday, I think that was you could sense that yesterday. People talking about all the things he did, and I think a lot of people were probably taken aback by really how impactful John Saunders was, and he had a tremendous impact. About him, Stuart Scott wouldn't, became what he became. Without him, Stephen A. Smith wouldn't be at ESPN. I mean, there's a lot of things that John Saunders, in a lot of ways, paved the way for. And he did the sports reporters, which he was great at. One of the things I remember, and this is just from an SU fan standpoint, Mike will tell you, I seemed like every year he was one of the guys calling the SU Georgetown games back in when the Big East game when the Big East was around. It's always tended to be him and I think Dick Vitale. I think he loved calling that. Um, and at least once a year. Sometimes he wouldn't get both games, but at least once a year. But just a tremendous broadcaster, a tremendous presence. He will be missed, and it was a very unexpected shock yesterday. You could tell by the way ESPN covered it. From Stephen A. Smith breaking down on air to Hannah Storm delivering the news, and it was just truly a shock to everybody, really, and I couldn't believe it when I heard. Really a presence, a figure in sports that should not and will not be forgotten, John Saunders. So may he rest in peace. And our thoughts and our prayers go to his family, his friends, his fans during this time. It's just a tremendous, tremendous shock and loss, really. Mike, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Who could have ever predicted that?
I know.
I can hear myself again. I don't know, because it was extraordinarily, sudden.
Right.
Yes, he was not as appreciated as like Scott was, or Boomer. What's his face? He does football, but then he does baseball once a year. What's his face?
Chris Berman.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's say John Saunders. I mean, if you didn't know, he had a huge impact on reporting. The sports reporters, he was excellent at that. And he was an excellent moderator of sports reporters.
Mm-hmm.
He was so much more than that. He was one of the best anchors SportsCenter's ever had.
Yes.
One of the best play-by-play guys in the business. He could do everything ESPN could possibly asked of him. But John Saunders is a huge loss for the sports world. And yes, 2016 sucks. 2016 really sucks.
It does.
All right, Brian, you have to do something about that, because I'm hearing myself, and it's kind of like a running gag that's not being funny. But I digress. Rest in peace. He's one of those people that you could say has gone too soon. He absolutely was.
Agreed. Yeah, and you almost want to fast forward to New Year's Eve and get this year over with. It's just been, oh my gosh. Okay, so again, we move on as best we can. Even though that's something that this is hard to move on from. It's a sad, sad thing to have to talk about. All right, so tonight we do not have a very long show. We only got a couple things to get to. First off, we're going to present this week's box office beat. And then secondly, there's a couple of things. We're going to talk about one little bit of entertainment news. And then we're going to discuss something that a lot of you have been talking about. And it's kind of like, I guess you can call it a spotlight on segment if you want. I do think it's an interesting thing to kind of talk about, because it is a trend that this, and you see it a lot in franchises now and big budget movies now. And that is studios basically destroying their own films for many reasons. One, sometimes it could be if it's in a shared universe, they go off of reaction from the previous film in the shared universe. Sometimes it's as simple as cutting a movie's budget. Sometimes it's as simple as just creative differences. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why these happen. We'll talk about it briefly. What is becoming a pretty bad trend in film now, and that is studios basically setting their movies up to fail. Let's just be honest. That's kind of what it is. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and that's really all we're going to do tonight. So one little entertainment topic, box office beat, and then this little discussion topic we're going to have, and that's pretty much the show here tonight. Next week, 2 shows, Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday's show will be an entertainment sports combo. We'll do the box office beat. If there's any important entertainment news, we'll get to it. If we don't have time, we won't be able to do it. On the sports side of things, we will all the major sports headlines from MLB and the Olympics. We'll talk about. We're not going to do any Olympic stuff tonight because I don't think there's anything that can't wait till Tuesday. So we'll do all the usual sports stuff on Tuesday and our usual entertainment stuff as well. We'll leave the wrestling stuff for Thursday because Thursday will be an all-wrestling show previewing WWE's second biggest pay-per-view of the year, SummerSlam. We'll go over the card, make predictions, all that good stuff. Questions and comments from our fans will be accepted. If you'd like to send something before the show or during the show next Thursday, you may do so. Time permits how many we get to and how much we do of it. We will have a later start next Thursday as well. So that will probably truncate the show a little bit, so keep that in mind. That start again. We always aim for 8:30 p.m. Eastern, but sometimes it could be later depending on how quickly I get out and all that stuff. So keep that in mind for next week. And then the weekend and the 2 weeks that will follow will only feature one show on Tuesday each week. We will not have any Thursday shows until September 8th after next Thursday. So please keep that in mind. All right, so that's all we need to get to as far as announcements. Let's get right down to it here as we take a look back at last week's box office. Now, okay, we're going to use this discussion to dovetail into our little discussion point tonight about studios wrecking their own movies, okay? Here's the thing, folks, okay? Obviously, we all knew, and this is going to be probably a very short box office because it's going to dovetail into another discussion here. We all knew that Suicide Squad was going to be number one. We all knew that Suicide Squad was going to do well. There were some people that thought it could go as high as 150, 160. It did not do that. It did suffer a drop-off from Friday to Saturday. And, of course, Saturday to Sunday. But that happens with every movie. Saturday to Sunday is always a big drop. All right. Now, that kept it in the $130 to $140 million range, which is still a very good opening. Very good opening, okay? So the movie's off and running. All right? It only, through 6 days, it's made $170.9 million. And from comparison, Batman vs. Superman made $201.3, and that features two of the bigger superheroes. And so a movie about villains made $170.9 million in 6 days. That's pretty good. Okay, that's pretty good. It's breaking several August records, including records set by Guardians of the Galaxy for both August opening and weekday numbers. Both Monday and Tuesday, Suicide Squad broke Guardians of the Galaxy's record. So it's off to a very good start. Now, the concern you would have is how well does it hold up? Because we've seen with DC movies, second weekends have been pretty rough, especially when they've seen the drop-off that they've had from Friday to Saturday. Suicide Squad, once again, showing that kind of drop-off like Man of Steel and like Batman vs. Superman. Look, the bottom line here is this. We've all sat here, we bashed the DC movies, said they're not good. Talk negatively about the fact that their second weekends have been horrible. They don't have legs. Yes, they end up making a good amount of money, but they could make so much more. And I think that's the thing we need to be clear about, okay? These movies are not flops. They make money, but they don't make as much money as they should. Therefore, they're not the hits that they should be. Is Suicide Squad going to end up in that realm? It could. It's not really clear yet. That will depend on if it keeps having the weekdays that it has, and it has a pretty good weekend this weekend, maybe around 60, 65 million, then no, it won't. The one thing it's got in its favor, it's an August release. Yes, Pete's Dragon's coming out this week. Yes, you got Ben-Hur, and you got some other movies. But realistically speaking, there's really nothing that's coming out that's going to directly compete with Suicide Squad. So it's got that in its favor, pardon me, unlike Batman vs. Superman, unlike Man of Steel. It does not have that against it. And the fact that it was able to do what it did with Jason Bourne out there. Again, I know Bourne movies usually drop in their second week, but still, I think DC and Warner Brothers should be very proud of what Suicide Squad did. Against all odds with the critics, it proves to you that there was an interest in this movie, okay? So Suicide Squad did exactly as we all thought it would. What was the other story outside of that? Not much. So we're not going to focus too much on that. I mean, Jason Bourne held up in second, 22.4 million, 62% drop off, which was expected. Again, Suicide Squad doing what it did really. Again, with Jason Bourne making 22 million actually makes it more impressive. Bad Moms held pretty strong with a 41% drop off, 14 million in third, so that's pretty good, staying put in third. Secret Life of Pets was up there, 11.5. That movie continues to hold well and do very, very well. It's over 300 million domestic. And Star Trek Beyond did very, very strong, over $10 million, 60% drop off in its third week. It's at over 127 point. It's at 127.7 million domestically. I mean, it's doing well enough here as it's $198.2 million on a $185 million budget. It's profitable from this point on here. So the only other new release last weekend was Non-Watch, which is a movie that everybody knew was going to flop. It just, again, this kind of movie just doesn't work in today's landscape right now. 6.2 million for the Kevin Spacey family comedy. And again, I like the family comedies coming back, but this kind of high concept thing that was so popular in the 80s and early 90s, it just doesn't work in the current scope here. So it was pretty expected that this would happen. Lights Out was up there with 6 million, continues to do very, very good business. And everything else was under 5 million. So really this weekend belonged to Suicide Squad, as we all thought it would. We knew 9 Lives would probably flop. And it's really hit its target. You know, anything above 120, 125 million was going to be right on target for Suicide Squad. It's just a matter of how high it was going to be. So it was right on there. So now your focus will shift to weekend number 2. And again, it's had very good weekend numbers. It made a little over 9 million yesterday. So it's had very good weekend numbers. Beat Guardians of the Galaxy on Monday and on Tuesday. So it is in a good position here if it can maintain this momentum. In a lot of ways, it almost offset the Friday and Saturday drop off. So it's doing very well right now. The question that you would have is, again, how well will it hold up this weekend? And it does. And there is some movies coming out that could hurt it. It's not direct competition, as I mentioned earlier, but it could hurt. And that's kind of the theme the next couple of weeks. No direct competition, but movies that could maybe hurt it and take a little bit of attention away. You have 2 major releases this weekend and 1 smaller release. The smaller release, which I'm not expecting to do much business, it's going to appeal to older audiences, but it's not going to do a very good amount of business. Florence Foster Jenkins, a drama from Paramount, opening in 1,528 theaters, starring Hugh Grant and Meryl Streep, PG-13. It's a movie that's going to get some awards buzz. Obviously, Meryl's in it. It will appeal to older audiences. It is in a limited amount of theaters, so you can't. I don't expect it to make more than 10 million. Anywhere between maybe 6 and 8 million max is probably what you're looking at for that movie. So it won't factor into the top 3 or 4, maybe 5th or something might be about where it ends up. The second biggest release this weekend is Sausage Party, an animated film from Sony Columbia, opening in 3,103 theaters. It's R-rated. It's only an hour and a half movie, so it's going to get probably more showings than a normal R-rated movie would because of that showtime. With the voice talents of Seth Rogen, Kristen Wiig, Selma Hayek, Ed Norton, Michael Cera, James Franco, Jonah Hill. Basically, Danny McBride, Paula, basically the usual Seth Rogen, Jonah Hill crowd, okay? It's a movie that I'm really surprised hasn't gotten more promotion than it has. It's gotten good promotion, but it hasn't gotten as much as I thought it would. I don't know how to read this movie. I could see this movie pulling in around 12 to 15 million, especially since it's probably going to appeal to younger audiences because it's Seth Rogen's fan base, and it's an adult animated comedy. We don't have too many of those. I could see it doing that, or I could see it totally flopping because I don't think they've given it as much marketing as they should. And I could see it pulling in around maybe 7 or 8 million, which would be a flop in my opinion, and just beating out Florence Foster Jenkins. So it could go either way. But I do not see this making more than 13, 14, maybe even 15 million. I just don't. Not with Suicide Squad out, not with Pete's Dragon. I don't see it. And that is the biggest release of the weekend that I just mentioned. Well, one of the movies I just mentioned, Pete's Dragon, a family film from Disney, opening in 3,702 theaters, starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Robert Redford, and Kyle Urban. They've had a very good run with these movies. You know that they've had a very good run. You would expect, especially if we'll see if this movie pivots off of Jungle Book a little bit. These movies have tended to pivot off each other. You know, each one has tended to do better than the one before it. So, I mean, I think Disney's building a trust with these live action movies now. And I think that people are more open to them. And Pete's Dragon's a movie that, you know, is maybe doesn't have quite the fan base that some of the prior movies have, but it's still a classic. And I think, especially in August, it could pull in a pretty good number. I don't know if I see it doing like $100 million opening here, but I do think a high, maybe like a $50 million opening is not out of the question. It's going to challenge Suicide Squad for number one. If Suicide Squad ends up on the low end of what people think it could do, then it could beat Suicide Squad. If Suicide Squad ends up on the high end, the low end would be around 50 million. The high end would be about 60, 65. If it ends up in the 60s, it'll beat Pete's Dragon. I can't see Pete's Dragon getting in the 60s. It won't do what Jungle Book did. But it should do pretty well. So, and I am expecting Suicide, based on the momentum it has now. There's two schools of thought here. Sometimes you can have this good momentum like Suicide Squad has, and because so many people saw it during the week, the weekend total ends up lower than it should be. Or the momentum could help carry you into the weekend, and you could end up having the higher end of what you're expecting for the weekend. So it could go both ways. I'm expecting it to fall in the middle. I'm going around 58, 60 million in that range. That should be enough to give it number one, and Pete's Dragon well exceeds expectations. I'll put Pete's Dragon around 45 to 50, maybe 51-ish kind of total. And then you'll put Sausage Party around 15, 13, 14, 15 million. I'm assuming it'll get the high end of what people think it could do because of the younger fan base coming out for Seth Rogen and company. And again, Florence Foster Jenkins probably between 6 and 8 million. And you'll filter the movies in there in between. Jason Bourne will probably be around maybe 12, 13 million, right around where Sausage Party will be. Bad Moms will be under 10 million, maybe around 8, 9 million, right around Florence Foster Jenkins. Secret Life of Pets will be in that range as well. Star Trek will probably go down to around 5 million, and then everything else will be under 5 million. So that's the story for this weekend. Mike, any thoughts on last weekend, this weekend, anything on the box office that you want to throw out there?
Suicide Squad is going to be on good word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Movies nowadays, especially superhero movies. Suicide Squad is dependent on good word of mouth. Well, we saw Suicide Squad. It kind of falls in line with the general opinion of Suicide Squad, which is cool at times. It was actiony. It was disjointed. Have the bad word of mouth that Batman and Superman have. You know, so at least they have that going for it. It's hard to kind of say what it'll do because it didn't have good word of mouth.
Right.
So here we are. Suicide Squad exists. It's hard to say what it'll do because audience reaction to it, people coming out saying, "Oh, ever."
Mm-hmm.
Then you're going to have the people saying, "This movie was not as good as that turd I took, and at least that turd gave me satisfaction."
Right. Right.
We're going to say it's great, and everybody else is going to kind of fall in between, like, eh. Shot shooting the things was cool.
Right.
Quinn was really hot, and what the hell is wrong with Jared Leto's voice? Ah. Ah, 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 ah. That was
Right.
Jared Leto.
Yeah. Very accurate.
So, and they had some nice little homages to the comics, like with like they had that one scene that was kind of thrown in there with about Harley Quinn's backstory. Very Alex Ross drawing.
Yeah.
Of Joker and Harley,
which I love. Yeah.
It was fan service, but it was just kind of there. So, in the end, Suicide Squad will just. Its word of mouth is going to either save it or bury it.
Yeah.
Who knows what it'll be?
Yeah, that is the question. Which dovetails nicely into our little discussion, our spotlight on discussion tonight, which is this trend of studios really destroying their own movies. Last year we had one of the greatest cases of it, and that's Fantastic Four.
That was a bit of a turd, yes.
But you've seen this. Movies that have reshoots. Not every movie that has a reshoot nowadays you hear somebody say, "Well, we're doing reshoots." You go, "Uh-oh." No, there's been very good movies that have had reshoots. Okay, it's when you have reshoot after reshoot after reshoot after reshoot. When you have that going on, then you have a problem, and that suggests something else is going on. And you can usually read between the lines. Whenever you see actors at a loss for how to describe a movie, or when they just seem like, you can tell by their body language, they seem uncomfortable just discussing the movie, okay? Then you're in for it. You really do. I mean, it's just the way it is. In rare cases, you might even have a director completely undercut his own movie the night of the premiere, like Fantastic Four last year. Hi, Josh Trank.
Hey, I was about to say, hi, Josh Trank. How are you?
Yeah. I mean, that's a rare case. That doesn't usually happen. Usually directors keep their mouth shut no matter what. That doesn't usually happen. But yeah, I mean, the point stands. It is becoming a very disturbing trend. And I think the reason why it's becoming more prominent, it does happen in other movies outside of comic book movies or franchises. It does happen outside of those, okay? It just doesn't become as pronounced. Because the fandom is not as strong. When you get into stronger fandom, we know, and I include myself, and we notice these things. You hear more things, you notice these things. You're like, oh wow, wait, what? Didn't you say you're going to do that? You do pick up on things, and it's a little bit of a stronger, I guess, connection to the projects, if you will. But here's the thing you got to remember, okay? You don't hear about this with Marvel. I mean, Marvel's made some mistakes, yes. You look at Thor: The Dark World. They made some creative mistakes there. It wasn't the worst movie in the world, but it wasn't the best, and they cut some of the things that would have made it really a more complete movie and a much better movie. And really, their idea was they based it off of reaction. Tom Hiddleston was the hot name at that point in the Marvel Universe. They wanted to get Loki more into the film. And somebody had to pay for that. And that was the villain, Malekith. Yes, Christopher Eccleston, who a lot of his stuff ended up on the cutting room floor. And really, and I think Mike would probably agree, that kind of hurt the movie.
Absolutely.
And it just, I mean, it wasn't the worst movie. No, it wasn't. But it's really in a lot of ways regarded as the worst Marvel MCU movie because of that. That's one reason. The other, you look at Iron Man 2, which a lot of people, in hindsight, a lot of people think it was better than Iron Man 3 now, but at the time, people didn't like it because they feel like it was it was setting up what was to come in the Avengers movies and everything else, and it at the expense, by doing that, you had to cut a lot of the stuff with Whiplash, and you had to cut a lot of the stuff with Hammer, and you had to cut a lot of the stuff with some of the other characters, and so again, when you get into these shared universes and trying to make everything connect and set up what's coming, and then you get reactions of other films before, and maybe you look at it and go, oh, well, if that didn't work in this film, that's not going to work in this movie. So we got to reshoot this. We can't do this. That's what happened with DC. Batman versus Superman may have made over $800 million worldwide, but it was considered too negative, too dark, too blah. The thing that was going around was there was an implication. Maybe it was just too much for people to absorb. It was too overwhelming. It was too miserable. Thank you, Mike. And so what do? They want to lighten up. So they go back and look at Suicide Squad. Well, let's do this. Let's make more one-liners. Let's make it more fun, more vibrant. Well, here's the thing. I think Suicide Squad was already going to be that. If you look at the original concept, when did they announce this movie? They announced it a couple of weeks after Guardians of the Galaxy came out. Mm-hmm. This was going to be DC Comics' Guardians of the Galaxy. This was a huge risk because even though the comic Suicide Squad was doing particularly well, transferring this to screen and and getting people to see a movie about villains. Let's be honest. The only villains that they're going to be familiar with are Harley Quinn, Joker, maybe. I mean, anything to do with Batman, they're probably going to be familiar with.
Croc.
Killer Croc, yes, Killer Croc. But that's probably about the extent of it. So I mean, but those are the characters they're going to carry, and even that is a risk. The original idea was for it to be very twisted, but I think a little bit darker. And I think that would have worked. It's a movie about villains. But they wanted to lighten it up. So what did they do? Add more one-liners, more jokes, more flamboyancy, more, they made Joker and Harley's story less abusive. They cut a lot of Jared Leto's scenes because of it. And which really hurt the Joker character in a lot of ways, along with Jared Leto's performance, in my opinion. But that's just what happened. And look, the movie itself, when we've seen it, I'm not going to give a review of it right now, but the movie itself is not bad. All right? There are elements in the movie that are really, really, there are certain elements that are particularly strong. All right, I do like what they did with Will Smith's Deadshot. All right, I think there's some good things there. The El Diablo, I thought, was very, very good. There are things in there that really did work and could have even worked even better if you gave them more time to breathe and develop. And that's really the thing. That's the major issue with that film, is that things don't get a chance to breathe and develop. It's boom, 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 boom. And for a movie with a little over 2 hour running time, it shouldn't be like that. So, but that's something that you see with a lot of these movies, and it's usually the movies that get hacked up because of reshoots and changing the themes and changing the tone and changing a couple of things around creatively because of maybe the movie that preceded it, which was Batman vs. Superman, or because you just can't decide on the creative direction. There's clashing behind the scenes. That's what happened with Fantastic Four. So there's a lot of reasons why these things happen. Creative clashing, reactions to previous films, reactions to films currently out. There's a lot, budgets. There's a lot of reasons why these things happen. A lot of reasons. The number one reason, I think, is just generally you react to what's come before and react to what's going on. That's the biggest thing. And that's what happened with Suicide Squad. Unfortunately, sometimes, yes, it does work out, and sometimes it doesn't. This is not exactly a great example, but X-Men First Class back in 2011. That movie was made in like 6 months. They had a year to do that movie. They pretty much set it up to fail in a lot of ways, but it ended up being one of the best X-Men movies they ever did. Miraculously. So sometimes these things, think of it like, for you wrestling fans out there, think of it like Daniel Bryan. How many times did he turn a crap gimmick into something gold?
Damien Sandow. Damien
Sandow. Yep, very good example, Mike. But that's kind
of better than Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, much better than Daniel Bryan. But but again, that's very rare that happens. That doesn't really happen that often. 90% of the time, you're setting a movie up to fail. They might end up making a profit or even being a modest hit or even a hit in general, but you always wonder what could have been. Could this movie have been $1 billion gross? Could this movie have done what could this movie have done for you? Batman versus Superman should have made $1 billion in its sleep. No doubt. Why didn't it? Because they destroyed it. They destroyed what it could have been. Suicide Squad. We'll see what happens. But I think we're going to come out of this once its run in theaters is done, thinking it could have made more than it did. I think that's no question about it. But it's a trend in a lot of ways that is I think it really suggests to you what the entertainment industry is now. All right, and it's always been reactionary. That's not even a question, and you kind of have to be. But I think it's so easy now to panic. TV shows panic, movies panic. They panic too easily now instead of sometimes staying the course. All right, and I understand, in this day and age, you got to fight and claw for every dollar, for every ratings point. I understand that. There's a lot of choices, and I understand. I get that. But there is something to be said for staying the course sometimes and just going with what is what you feel creatively was the right thing from day one. Because sometimes when you try to retool it and move things around, it ends up making it even... It doesn't. Sometimes not even worse, but it ends up being a jumbled mess. And sometimes that's worse than a movie being just bad. Because then you see the potential that it could have been, and you're like, "Wow, geez, why didn't you just give me that?" So, Mike, do you have anything that you'd like to add
about
this
the whole situation?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
It's time. Speaking of movies that Disney hasn't butchered yet, DC, see, that's the thing. We're not really hammering on DC as bad as we should.
No.
They have a habit of this.
Very big habit.
Hands off with Christopher Nolan and his series. Although I imagine they wanted to be, they were very hands off. But you kind of saw the signs with Green Lantern.
Mm-hmm.
You saw the signs with the Green Lantern. That was a hackneyed piece of shit. You saw more signs with Man of Steel. After the Krypton stuff, which was the best part of the movie, it was a hackneyed piece of shit. Shit all over it. It was awful. Then we had Superman. It exists. It was a hackneyed piece of shit. Suicide Squad. Yes, they announced it after Guardians of the Galaxy. Going to be as good as Guardians of the Galaxy.
No.
And DC went out of their way to mock Galaxy. Galaxy went out there, made $1 billion, which is essentially what this is ripping off. Will not make that much money. I'm saying it right now. It will not level. Because it goes back to the word of mouth. Everybody knows when they sit down, they watch it, and they're like, well, I'm not going to want to see this again.
Yeah.
You want to make movies for repeated viewing. You want to make fans out of everybody. Killing a movie because, disagreements, because this, that, and the other thing, it does you more of a disservice.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't help you at all. Just go and make a complete movie. I mean, we are talking about DC and not a lot, but let's be clear here. They're the biggest offenders. Is Marvel innocent? It's not innocent. I have money to see. How are you? I'm well, thanks. I paid good money to see Christopher Eccleston, the guy who played the Ninth Doctor, have most of his scenes cut because Loki. Excuse. Absolutely terrible excuse. But that's what happened. Mickey Rourke had all of the hype in the world following the wrestler. This movie, he does Iron Man 2. It cut because we have to set up the Avengers. Marvel's not innocent either. So here we are, just movie. Studios do need to learn when to get hands off, you know? They absolutely need to learn when to be hands off. But here we are, we're just waiting for, and you know what? I don't know what Justice League is going to be like on what's happened with the last couple movies. Good, now will it? That's what the bad word of mouth, that is what cultivating a terrible reputation, saying that, oh, well, we are the victims of everybody. Everybody wants us to fail. What that attitude, that's what that belief is going to get you. If you have that frame of mind, nobody's going to want to see your shitty movie anyway.
Yeah.
That's all. How hard is that?
Bottom line. It's the bottom line. And by the way, I don't know if you've heard this, Mike.
I heard me.
Well, yeah, I know you heard you. Remember last week we were talking about the absurdity of how fans were threatening to shut down Rotten Tomatoes because of the Suicide Squad reviews?
Not doing that now, huh?
Well, I guess now fans are like doing a lawsuit against. I guess fans want to sue Warner Brothers or DC or the people behind Suicide Squad for false advertising because of Jared Leto's cut scenes.
Oh, sure. Don't they know there's this thing going to be this thing called a director's cut?
It's apparently
which is going to happen.
It's apparently one fan that's doing this. By the way, it's a Joker. They're calling it a Joker super fan who's threatening to sue for false advertising over the lack of Joker scenes because the trailer suggested there would be more of him in the movie. That's unbelievable, boy. This movie's bringing out some of the wow. I mean, good Lord.
Joker. If you are a Joker super fan, a very large problem with you. Be a Joker super fan. The guy is the all right. In terms of DC Universe, evil villain doing the worst stuff. Joke. I don't know.
Oh God! I thought the Rotten Tomatoes thing was absurd, but my goodness.
You know what DC's going to tell them? Withdraw your lawsuit. We will give you a voucher for the director's cut. You are literally the only person who has an issue with this anyway.
Get that Suicide Squad Ultimate Edition, right?
Right. On Black Friday, everybody.
Captain America Civil War, $25. Suicide Squad, Batman vs. Superman, 2-pack, $5.
Worth every penny.
Oh, goodness. All right, let's move on to our final topic of the night. This is a real piece of entertainment news that's been circulating over the last day or so. Not that it comes as any surprise, as I'm sure, but word has gotten out now, officially, that there will not be a Ghostbusters sequel.
No
Uh,
way.
I know, right? It apparently, according to the Hollywood
How are
Reporter,
you,
this is the,
are you addressing the both of us?
I'm trying
By
to.
disembodied, me and the disembodied voice on the other side?
I would like to, yes.
I'm sure that guy's not very happy.
Oh, I'm sure. Anyway,
Right, other Mike? He said yes.
um, but let's detail this for a second. You'll recall back in mid-July, right on the precipice of Ghostbusters being released, Sony executives declared that a sequel was going to be a given. There was no doubt in their mind that this would happen. And that was the last time that they addressed the whole sequel situation. As of earlier this week, Ghostbusters had earned just under $180 million at the global box office and $117 million domestic. There are still a few markets that have yet to open, France, Japan, and Mexico, but it is expected that it will have trouble getting to the $225 million $225 million despite its hefty production budget of $144 million plus a big market spend. So here's the thing. They would need it to break $300 million to be truly profitable. Okay? It's expected they're going to have over a $70 million loss on this movie. They had very high hopes for it. They were going to, apparently now they're saying that there is no future plans for a sequel to the film, even though all 4 actresses were apparently signed on for 2 sequels. Apparently, Sony has decided instead to go forward with a potential animated Ghostbusters movie that could hit theaters in 2019, and an animated TV series called Ghostbusters Ecto-Force, which is supposed to debut in early 2018. Both will be guided by Ivan Reitman. So, or the group that usually handles the Ghostbusters stuff. So, so it does not look like, Sony's saying that there's not going to be a loss with merchandising and everything. They'll break even at least. But it's being said by multiple media outlets there'll be a $70 million loss on this movie. So it does not look like we will be getting a Ghostbusters sequel. Not that me and Mike both have been on record saying that we didn't think this was going to work. It didn't. It didn't open as bad as it could have. It opened surprisingly better because it did gain some last-minute traction. But after that, it just kind of fell off the map, and it did exactly what we all thought it would. It just did not do enough. And first of all, they spent way too much. I understand you got to market the movie, and they were trying. The fact that they really did try to oversell it. First of all, the amount of marketing dollars they spent on this movie was ridiculous. You could tell
They're still marketing it.
Yeah, but you could tell that they, as it went along, they started to lose faith that people were going to, again, there was a lot of backlash. They were trying to overcome it. And they spent the marketing dollars to try to overcome it, and it didn't work. It did not work. And it ended up just, making it even harder for the movie to make a profit. So, I mean, is it really a shock that it's going to be a loss? And now they go forward with animated properties, apparently. So, I know you're not surprised, are you?
Well, it can't bring back the original.
Yeah.
So, this is the direction? No. Not at all.
Yeah.
We didn't like this movie because we're sexist and we don't want these actresses to succeed. We weren't keen on this movie. Good. It doesn't get any more simple than that. didn't think the stuff in the trailer was funny. In fact, the trailer was horrible. The trailer was god awful. The first one, anyway. The second one was apparently a little bit better. Or a fan recut the main trailer than what they gave us.
Right.
Now, there was so much controversy around this movie. Like, there's ridiculous amounts of controversy around this movie. But it boiled down to the fact that really cut off audience because pigs want to see the movie. You cut off another percentage of your because Ghostbusters movies that you love, they're older in the past. This is the new stuff. Ghostbusters is going to be bigger and better than ever, but people had a connection with those movies. People really liked those movies. Right. Mostly Ghostbusters 1. Man, not so much Ghostbusters 2, but it existed, Mm-hmm. So you kind of cut off a percentage of your audience literally right there.
Right.
And so you had to be reliant on the other percentage of your audience, namely women and people who will go out to see anything. So of course it didn't do as good as everybody thought. Mouth. You heard bad things about not horrible things, but you heard that not all was well in paradise,
Mm-hmm.
Great. The jokes weren't funny, and people turned out would rather see the original Ghostbusters movie than some remake. I don't know how to describe this, but then again,
maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't think it's the problem. It's like a reimagining remake. It's like a combination of the both. It's not the problem. It's just was into it.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
so, that wasn't any excuse to treat Leslie Jones like that.
Yeah. Look, the bottom line is, the cast is extremely talented. Okay, the problem wasn't with the cast. Everybody wants. Whenever you criticize this movie, it seems like, oh, well, you're just against the all-female Ghostbusters. No, that's not it at all.
That was
never it. The movie itself, I just didn't like the direction that they were going in. And from the minute I saw the first trailer, I felt like everything I heard about the way that they were going about it just did not seem like it was going to work. I seen a lot of people say, oh, well, I went to this movie, I thought it was fun. And I thought, okay, fine, you thought it was fun. That's great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But clearly it didn't get over with enough of an audience to guarantee a sequel. If it didn't do that, and look, this is a movie that was designed to restart a franchise. If it doesn't restart a franchise, then it's a failure. That means it didn't make enough. It's a failure. It's a failure. And it falls on the creative team behind it. And that's the bottom line. You had 4 talented actresses, and you had Chris Hemsworth, and you had cameos from some of the original Ghostbusters cast. You should have made it work, and they didn't. And you can get into the whole diatribe about release dates and, there's so much look, July was not a month full of competition. The only movie that raked in big bucks, I know Jason Bourne did okay, but that was a guarantee. The only movie that raked in big bucks in July was Secret Life of Pets, and that wasn't competition for Ghostbusters. So it's not like it opened in May when all the big movies seemed to open and there was huge competition all over the place. Okay? It didn't have that. It actually had a couple open weeks for itself, and it didn't do it. Point blank. So no surprise that you're not getting a sequel to the movie. Hopefully someday they animated movie might end up being okay.
Well, I mean,
Hopefully,
they can't really do very much because one of the original Ghostbusters, Harold Ramis, passed away. God rest his soul, you know?
yeah.
So there's not a whole lot they can do. People, it boils down to this. And I hate to interrupt you, but it
Oh, it's
boils
okay.
down to this. People to see a reimagining of the Ghostbusters. They wanted to see the original Ghostbusters. I guarantee you, if Ghostbusters 3, and this was everybody's fault for years and years and years, if they had just done a Ghostbusters 3 with the original Ghostbusters, while we still had Harold Ramis with us, well, and maybe Bill Murray could be interested. And that would have been, you would have made a profit. It would have been like $300 million at least. Would have cared. Instead, you go out there and you treat us like idiots because we didn't want to see this one.
Yeah.
We didn't want to see this one. By the way, I mean, that's just long story short. People just wanted to see the original Ghostbusters.
Well, we'll see what they do with the properties going forward here. It seems like they got some ideas, and maybe they'll revisit it at some point. Maybe they'll do a better job. I mean, I don't know, but definitely not surprising news in the least. All right. So with that being said, that is it. We are done. We actually did a full hour, so that's good. I'm pretty happy with that. That was good. Just because the show is over does not mean you have to stop interacting or contributing to our show. You continue to have your voice here. You can give us your feedback, your reactions, or comments to things we said on the show, things we talked about, topic ideas or breaking news items we want to make sure that we cover, questions about the show and the scheduling of the show. Any of those things you can do by email, Facebook, and Twitter. You can email us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. You can use either the hashtags we have for you. You can create your own hashtags. The hashtags we have for you, hashtag ITSpotlight411, hashtag ITS5 Network, our 5th anniversary on the air hashtag. Or you can create your own hashtags when talking to us on Twitter or interacting with us on Twitter. Maybe if you're talking about movies, use hashtag ITS Movies. Maybe if you're talking about wrestling, hashtag ITS Wrestling. Whatever the case, you can create your own. Just don't be disrespectful or offensive. That is all that we ask. One other thing. You can find us on Facebook if you wish. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on Facebook and make sure you like our page upon finding it. Another thing, TV awards, which our nomination ballots deadline is fast approaching. Again, any submissions you make for the TV awards can only be done by email. And this includes also any questions or comments that you have related to it. I used to say questions and comments could go on Twitter and Facebook, but I just think it's easier to tell everybody just to go to email for it because then you don't get people confused. So anything to do with the TV awards, submissions, questions, etc., all by email only. If you please, that's what we need. That's the best way to do it. So please only email us anything to do with the TV awards. Just email it to us. Okay, submissions, questions, any of those things by email only at itspotlight411@gmail.com. Again, email us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. Any TV award submissions or questions or comments, please. That's the only way in which to do that. Just a reminder about that since people sometimes get that mixed up. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest information about our show, especially as it relates to scheduling. Anytime there's a last-minute postponement or delay, something that I can't plan for ahead and let you know about on air. The only way I can let you all know is by social media. So you want to make sure you follow us on Facebook and Twitter to get the latest updates on our show. If you'd like to keep up with our show, you have or catch up on old episodes or classic episodes, you have a number of ways to do that. If you're somebody that prefers streaming and seeing us on screen, and maybe you're only interested in our Google Plus YouTube episodes, which is everything from mid-October all the way up into tonight's episode, our most recent episode here tonight, then you'll want to check us out here on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search for In the Spotlight 411. You have access to every episode we've ever done on Google Plus and YouTube, everything from mid-October all the way up into tonight's episode. So you can check out all those episodes. Maybe you missed a part of an episode, maybe missed a whole episode and want to look back at old episodes or catch up, whatever the case may be. You can do all that here on Google Plus and YouTube. Just search for In the Spotlight 411. Again, search for In the Spotlight 411. If you're more of a fan of audio podcasting, hearing us instead of seeing us, maybe you want to listen to us on the go because that's something you like to do. Or maybe you're interested in episodes beyond just our Google Plus and YouTube episodes, maybe episodes from way back when we started in 2010, 5 years ago, and whatever the case may be. You can also check us out on Podbean and iTunes, our main host sites. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on both sites, on Podbean and iTunes, and you'll have access to not only our Google Plus and YouTube episodes, but every episode we've ever done. Everything from our early days on Blog Talk Radio from October 2010 to January 2011. Everything from a very lengthy run on Talk Shoot from January 2011 right up until early October of last year, of 2015. And then, of course, all of our Google Plus and YouTube episodes from mid-October of last year all the way up into tonight's episode, all transferred over into audio format for you. All those episodes are available from the most recent date to the oldest on both Podbean and iTunes. Anytime you want to listen to them and check them out. Maybe you missed an episode, missed a part of an episode, want to check out an episode again. Maybe you're a longtime fan and wants to look back at old episodes from way back when, or a new fan that wants to check out episodes from way back when for the first time. Whatever the case, you can do all that on Podbean and iTunes. Just search for In the Spotlight 411. Again, search for In the Spotlight 411. So Google Plus, YouTube, Podbean, iTunes, all ways which you can keep up with our show and look back at old episodes whenever you would like. I want to thank Mike for being here tonight. Thank you, Mike.
Thank Kingdom Hearts.
Cool.
Also, I guess it's time for bed, but I'm playing Kingdom Hearts.
I want to thank myself for another great show, pat myself on the back, and thank all of you for your continued support and your contributions to the show. Thank you so much for watching. To those that will be listening as well at some point, thank you to you as well. We do appreciate it. That is it for this week. Again, next week we will come at you with 2 shows. That'll be the last time until the first full week of September that we will have 2 shows. Tuesday will be a sports entertainment combo show. Any big sports headlines, MLB, Olympics, any of those things, we'll talk about everything that has to be talked about in the sports world on Tuesday. Entertainment, box office beat, any important entertainment news that we have to fit in, we will do that too. That will be on Tuesday. And that will be at our normal start time, 8 o'clock from Eastern Time here on Google Plus and YouTube. And Thursday, we'll have a later start time. I'm working my second job again, so a later start time next Thursday, probably around 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the tentative time, as always. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time next Thursday. We'll have an all-wrestling show for you, previewing WWE SummerSlam pay-per-view, which will take place on pay-per-view and the WWE Network a week from Sunday. We'll preview all the matches, make predictions, go over the card, and again, as time we'll address questions and comments from wrestling fans, and even non-wrestling fans. If you want to submit a question related to wrestling, you can feel free. We'll address questions and comments from the fans. Time will decide how many we do, but we will do it. So you can send in your questions or comments either before the show or during the show next Thursday by email, Facebook, and Twitter. So keep that in mind. That will be our entire show next Thursday. So keep that in mind. Again, that will be an 8:30 p.m. start time, tentative start time next Thursday. And then that will be our last Thursday show until September 8th. The 2 weeks that follow will only feature Tuesday shows both weeks. So please do keep that in mind. So all that being said, that's it for tonight. That's it for this week. I hope you have a great rest of your night, a great weekend, and a great start to your week next week. Stay safe, everyone. Enjoy. Have fun. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you back here this coming Tuesday night, August the 16th, broadcasting and streaming live here on Google Plus and YouTube at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, have a good night, everybody.